Welcome to the Library Show. This is our January episode, first one of the year. So it's a little bit about the kinds of resolutions that you might have made for New Year's and things that you would like to start doing in the new year. One of those might actually be yoga. Our first guest is Sinclair Brown. I have to admit that I know Sinclair because I used to go to water exercises at the Y in Havertown, and Sinclair had a marvelous water yoga. Was that the right title, Sinclair?
Tai Chi. It's
Tai
a
Chi,
moving
okay.
meditation.
It was a meditation class, and there were people who took that class who were so crazy about it and so mellow afterwards, if I may say. They said, oh, this is a mellow start to my day. This is terrific. And the real issue here is this is going to be a dry land class that Sinclair will be teaching. Before we go into the specifics of that class, Sinclair, tell us a little bit, if you would, please, about your background.
Well, I started being an exercise instructor in 2001, so I've been doing this for 20 years. And I started out doing sort of, boot camp, cardio work. And I was working at Cabrini University when I heard about the Ludington Library. Anyway, when COVID came in, we had to do land-based exercises because those people who were coming to my class couldn't come to the pool because everything was shut down, So the director came to me and said, well, what else can you do? And I said, well, I could do chair yoga. And he said, that's great. Okay, we could do that. So we set up the Zoom class. And because I'd been doing yoga, since my early 20s, and I thought that I could adapt it to this program. And somebody from that class said, the Ludington Library needs a chair yoga instructor. Why don't you talk to them? And so I did. And that's how I became involved with the Ludington Library. Couldn't be happier. Every class is just fantastic. I feel so much better at the end than I do at the beginning. And I could say probably my participants feel the same way.
That's marvelous. I think it's fascinating that you started off in the boot camp box because I have to admit, for the audience who may not know, I tried doing boot camp once. And boy, that's hard stuff. It's aside from what you're doing with your body, it's a very different mindset when you're doing boot camp because it's very rush, do the toughest thing possible. And I think chair yoga is a total opposite. And
we all evolve, And we all age. And so when you think about yoga, you think about something that's on the floor. And as we get older, it's easy to get down on the floor, but it gets harder and harder to get up. And so that's why you adapt that yoga class to the chair. And it works really well.
Can you use any kind of chair in your home? Is there anything specific people need to have?
It should be a chair that doesn't roll. Okay, because this class has 3 components. It's on Wednesdays from 10 to 11 a.m. And it has 3 components, as I said. It's got the chair yoga, the yoga postures. It has a standing balance component, which everybody needs balance. People talk to me all the time about how they need balance with the chair. So you're holding onto the chair. And then at the very end, we have a 5-minute meditation to just sort of gather in and settle down and note how you feel after having done all this fantastic work.
Wow, that's terrific. I happen to be sitting in a desk chair at the moment that has arms and wheels. So clearly that would not work for me for chair yoga.
No, it needs to be without chairs. It should have a low back also because we twist and you want to be able to put your arm over the back of the chair. But you can adapt it if you have a high chair, whatever you have, but it shouldn't have arms. And you should be dressed in nice, loose clothing.
Okay, sort of yoga shirt, yoga pants, whatever is there. I assume that because it's Zoom, there's no limit on the size of the class, or is there a limit?
Exactly. In fact, there are over 100 people registered for the class. You have to register through the Ludington Library. So you go onto the Ludington Library site and go into their calendar and see the chair yoga class. And then you can go through and register that way. But we have about 25 people usually every week. And there are people from out of state too, which is what makes Zoom so great. Zoom is fantastic. People have had fear to go out in public. And this way they can just do this from their home, wherever they are, without being afraid of, contracting a disease. They don't have to worry about snow and ice and weather. And as I say, you can just do it from your own home, and it's very comfortable that way.
That's a marvelous thing. I have a dear friend in California, and I could actually contact her and say, Shirley, you and I could do this together.
Absolutely.
I bet
I have a friend in Montana who I hike with, and she comes in every week and she said, it's so great to see you. There are people in Massachusetts who come on. And the great thing about this is when you register for the class, it's no cost to the participants.
Wow.
So they can come on and take this. It's Wednesdays from 10 to 11 a.m., which is a good time for people who like to sleep in, maybe have their coffee, and then come in. And it's a great way to start your day. When you leave the class, like you said about my I Chi class at the Y, you just feel less stressed. What happens is we're all so stressed all the time. You don't even realize it. And this is a moment that you can take for yourself to just settle and be quiet and breathe. From the moment you're born until the moment you die, there's nothing but the breath. There's always the breath. And if you take just a deep breath, it will tell you, it'll calm you just by taking that deep breath. And even as I talk to you now, when I say take a deep breath, you take a deep breath and suddenly, don't you already feel better?
I do.
And that's how easy
Absolutely.
it is. It's not difficult. Anybody can do it, and it will make you feel better.
Okay, well, that sounds terrific. And the other piece of this, not only in terms of geography, but in terms of age, there's no age restriction or age limitation on this.
Not at all. And even if you have you can't do some of the postures, they can be adapted. And from this class, I have a new motto. It's lead with your heart. Because one of the postures, I say, well, you have to come forward with your heart towards your leg, so instead of, curling in, you lean forward with that good posture. So you imagine your heart leading you. And now this has become my latest motto, lead with your heart.
Oh, I like that. That's a good one. I took yoga once from somebody some years ago, and she had me do a twist, and it hurt my back. And so the point of yoga is that you have to keep doing it. So I assume so you can continue to improve and not hurt your body.
Well, one of the great things about Zoom meetings is there's no competition. You're just there with yourself. So if you can't twist very far, you just go as far as you can. You don't go beyond your abilities. You listen to your body. And I'm constantly telling the class to, be aware of who you are, that you are not me and I am not you. That, wherever you are, that's okay. That's where you should be. But everything that you do is going to be beneficial.
That sounds terrific. Well, I hope people will register for the class. It is going to be from 10 to 11 at Ludington in the room, the room with the glass doors at the back on the first floor. Or
no, it's not at the library. It's totally online. It's Zoom.
Of course. You see, my brain is still on the old style. New style, Zoom. Do it in your own home, in front of your computer. That's it. Bring your computer wherever you want it to be.
Lead with your heart.
Lead with your heart. Thank you, Sinclair.
Come to your yoga at 10 to 11 on Wednesdays.
Great. Thanks so much. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too. We'll be right back with the library show. Thanks. Welcome back to the January episode of the Library Show. Well, now that you've learned about doing yoga in the new year, we're going to talk about a fiber arts program. What is fiber arts? We're going to find out with Valerie Vitale. Valerie, this program gives people an opportunity to do something with their hands, with their fingers, with their minds, with their artistic inclinations. But maybe you could just give us an idea of how you came to do this and why you will be teaching this.
Well, I was always pretty crafty, honestly, with different things. So I ended up teaching myself to crochet about 6 years ago with various YouTube videos. And then I joined a community on Facebook where I got a lot of different other fiber artists and crocheters to kind of help me out and ask questions. And then it was before COVID started, I wanted to do a class on crocheting, and I figured the library would be a good place to start.
Oh, that's great. I remember when there was a needlepoint class in the lower level of the Ardmore Library, and I'd come down, and they always seemed to be using pastel yarns to do whatever they did, and it looked beautiful.
Yeah.
It's a great thing. The nice thing about doing fiber arts is that you have something solid at the end of it.
Yes.
It's not like if you make food, everybody eats it and you have an empty plate. Hopefully everybody eats it. But with fiber arts, you have something you can display, something that you can show to others, which is wonderful. Tell us a little bit about this class that you're doing, because I was struck by the fact that, number one, I have to apologize to the audience, it's for adults. We have lots of things at the libraries for kids, and we often feature them. But this particular thing is really for adults who could be at home and following you on Zoom. What can they be doing at home?
So basically, it's not really a class. It's a place, a community. I'm trying to create a community of people to get together and kind of work on their projects that they're currently working on, because a lot of times there's so many distractions at home that we don't always get a chance to work on what our projects that we want to work on. So I created this for other fiber artists to kind of come and get together and just, work on their project and kind of, be supportive of each other.
So is this an in-person class? I somehow had mistaken it and thought it was Zoom. So it's
no, it's in person, and we meet every other Friday.
Where?
At the Gladwell Library in the community room.
At what time?
From 1 to 2.
Okay, so Gladwell Library 1 to 2. Do people need to pre-register to come to this?
They do need to pre-register to come to it for a little bit, until we don't need to have limitations on how many people can be in the room.
I see. Okay. And I'm going to ask the V word. Is it a ventilated room?
It is ventilated, and I do have the windows open even in the cold. Yes.
Well, yeah, I know. I hate to ask this, but I think it's a very relevant question these days. And yes. I would want to do everything that I can to encourage people to go. And I think knowing that it's a room that's ventilated and that you're limiting the size is very good. How do people register for this?
So they just register online through the Lower Merion Library website.
Okay, so if they go to lmls.org, click on Gladwin, look at Friday. It's every Friday?
It's every other Friday. Just every other Friday. We had one this past Friday. I think it was the 10th, December 10th. And then we're not going to obviously have one on the 24th since we're closed. And then the following one will be on January 7th. And then it's every other Friday after that. Okay, so it'll be January 7th and January 21st. Yes.
Okay, just want to be good. Because sometimes people say different dates, but it's basically the first and the third Friday, essentially.
Yeah, essentially, yes.
Okay, all right, that's helpful. Pre-register first and third Friday. And of course, the other question is, what should people bring with them?
Their projects. They can bring whatever project that they're currently working on. Anything that they're working on as like a fiber artist. If they're working on needlepoint, quilting, we had some quilters come in, crochet, knitting, anything like that.
Wow, that must be quite an assortment of people when they come in, and they have everything from a quilt, which could be quite large, down to something that's a crochet project.
Yes.
Wow. And I'm very impressed that you're able to perhaps teach and lead. That's probably the better word, lead. Discussions of how people can improve, how they can learn. Is that basically what you do?
Basically, I'm trying to create like this community of people that can support each other, basically.
Okay. And this is a community that could go across the country, right? I mean, people could be anywhere.
Yeah. I mean, if they essentially, we can probably eventually have people like meet on Zoom if they want to as well. Like, not just in person in the room.
Has anybody who's come to Gladwin to do this in person said, gee, I have a friend who would do this on Zoom? If you did it on Zoom, is there any interest in that? Or that's
I have not had anybody yet, but I'm definitely open to creating more of a, people coming.
Well, I think that for years and years, people got together to play cards. And what they liked about playing cards is you would be playing cards, or for that matter, playing mahjong, and you would have the socializing along with it. And what happened with COVID is I know several people who did Zoom bridge games. I don't know quite how they managed it.
That's really cool. How they did that.
Yeah, and they said what happened is that the socializing factor sort of went down because you had to focus twice as hard to be doing your cards via Zoom. So this is something where I could see this being done by Zoom too someday, or via Zoom someday.
Yeah.
Okay. So how many people usually come or can fit in that room?
Well, right now we have up to 15 people. I've had anywhere between like 7 and as low as 4 people come. But I mean, it's just getting started. So we want more people to come. Yes.
Well, I hope this will be something that will get out there and appeal to the community that does fiber arts. That's what this is called, fiber arts, because they're dealing with
with any kind of like
yarn,
material,
cloth, anything. Okay. Yes. I don't want to mischaracterize it, so I want to be sure. And they can come to Gladwin from
1 to 2.
1 to 2 on every other Friday, the first and third Fridays of the month. And is this going to continue throughout the winter into the spring, or?
Yes.
Oh,
we might take a break in March because we have a different program going on during then. But yes, it will continue every other Friday.
Okay. And if I were to walk into the Gladwell Library on that Friday, which room would I be going to?
It would be the community room upstairs.
Community room upstairs. I have to say, I have been to the Gladwell Library and I've only been on the first floor. I haven't. Oh, no, I did see the Pennsylvania Railroad books one time.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, that was very, very cool to see all those volumes. Sorry, I got off because Gladwell Library has such a historical aspect to it. It's such an interesting building. It's a modern building, and yet they have the history of the Pennsylvania Library, of Pennsylvania Railroad, which of course is why we're called the Main Line, because that relates to the railroad. Sorry, I'm sorry. I apologize for the tangent. Valerie, thank you very much. I appreciate your being on. And it sounds like a great class, and your enthusiasm will carry you far, and I think would make sure that the people who come will definitely enjoy doing this. You've inspired me.
So. I hope so.
Get my fingers to do this and come up with something. I'm going to ask you one question that's personal. If I would like to start this, which particular fiber arts is the best place to start?
Probably, I mean, I think crochet is really easy.
Okay.
But not everybody does. Honestly, I think it's different for everybody.
Okay. All right. So pick something and keep that in mind. Gladwell Library, go to LMLS website. Valerie, thanks so much for being on. I appreciate it. Thank you. Take care. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with The Library Show. Welcome back to the January episode of The Library Show. Well, we've talked a little bit about yoga, so that's for the body. We've talked about crafts for the hands, and now this is something for the mind as you start the year. We have had for many years, and I say we because it's really the Ardmore Library, has sponsored the Charlotte Miller Simon Poetry Contest. When this first started, I think I was the president of the Ardmore Library Board, and it started small, and it got big so fast. We on the board could hardly believe it. We have with us today Bonnie Shuman. Bonnie is the co-chair of the poetry contest. And Bonnie, I'm going to ask you, how many entries has the poetry contest had over the last few years? And these were
last few years have really, really gotten bigger and bigger. I don't know whether it's COVID last year or not, but last year we had 501.
Wow.
Entrants, and that's children, teens, and adults. I can break it down if you like.
Yeah, that's very impressive that there are 501 entries.
Yeah.
People are sitting at home and clearly writing poems.
I think the fact that this whole process is online facilitated, they are doing that, but there were a lot of children and adults that just wanted to be involved online.
Now, I understand that you have also worked with teachers in local schools so that the children and the teens are doing these things, but they are also being encouraged by the teachers in their lives.
Yes, we send out a flyer.
There it is.
And it's also online on the Lower Merion Library System webpage and the Ardmore Library webpage, a flyer saying that it's coming up, that the poetry contest will be open. And then we send it to the schools. We have a database of all the schools in the area. We have had 29 different schools involved in submissions last year. And that's not counting the adults, because
No, the adults are not
schools.
at school. That's
Right.
very impressive. 29 schools involved.
Right. So we have kind of a long-standing relationship with the schools. I will get emails from them just talking about the different children that are involved. It's very neat.
That is neat. I have to say, tell me a little bit about what kind of limits or guidelines you have
Sure.
for entrance.
Sure. We're very open, but let me give you the guidelines. We have 3 categories. The children are grades 1 through 6. The teens are grade 7 through 12, and the adults are anybody over 18. And we do not restrict the topics at all. You can write about whatever you want. It should be an unpublished poem, something that's never been published before. And there is no fee for submission. And you do it online. You just go into the library website, click on the poetry contest, and there is an application submission right there. And we are open now. We have already opened the doors for this year's contest, and it will be open. The deadline will be February 4th. So you have all month of January to think of poems, write them, and send them in.
Can I back up for a moment? People go to LMLS website, and then do they need to click on Ardmore Library, or will the poetry
They
contest
don't
be
have
right
to.
there?
It's right on the Lower Merion one, but if you happen to go in through Ardmore, it's on there as well.
Okay. And they can enter at any time up until February 4th.
That
When
is
do they
correct.
find out if they have won?
It'll be in March. We have 3 judges, 1 for each of the categories, and they will review selected poems and let us know first, second, and third prize, and perhaps 1 or 2 honorable mentions. And then we will have our poetry celebration in April. We have selected April 10th this year, and hopefully we will be back doing it in person. The last 2 years, we have been doing it virtually, which worked out very well. People were in their homes. It was kind of fun to see pets wandering through and parents around. It was really lovely. But we're hoping to be back in person. It's nice to be together. And we would be at the Lower Merion Township building on April 10th at 2 p.m. But at April 10th, 2 p.m. will be the event no matter what.
No matter what. I have to say that when I went to one of the events at the Township building in the boardroom, it was fascinating because in many cases, especially in the case of the children, but also in the adults, you had 3 generations of families there to celebrate. So the grandparents were there, the parents were there, the siblings, the aunts, the uncles, because there's no limit on the number of people who can come, although the room did start to feel a little bit crowded, but it was really terrific. And this was all for poetry, and it was great.
And people love it. I mean, the children are young and vibrant, the adults are vigorous. It's a nice way to see the whole community together.
I think that's true. And in terms of seeing the whole community, I guess this was pre-COVID, but the poems that were winners and that were second and third place, as well as an honorable mention, were all put into a booklet that was available in each of the libraries. Ta-da.
If you go to the library now, you can have last year's booklet.
Okay.
There is one every year, and all the poems are written in here. And I should say, every winner is invited to read their poem at the celebration. And it's a chance for the younger ones and the adults to learn to speak in public.
Oh, I think that's a really important piece of it. I was struck also how many of the kids were sort of first generation English speakers in their families. We have a lot of people from other countries in Lower Merion. We may not always be aware of it, but that is true. And you would have these immigrant families who were so thrilled by poetry that their child had won, was here speaking in public. That it was I'm getting moved now. I'm getting teary because it really was. It's a very moving thing. I don't mean to
Well, it
diminish.
is. And I've
both
spoken to
special.
parents that appear to be learning English and very, very involved in wanting their children to partake in what we have in this contest. So it's pretty
terrific.
wonderful.
So we've talked about what there is. There's no limit in terms of the length of the poems, correct?
There is. It's a typed page. What the booklet is this size, and what we do with a longer poem is we go over to, I don't know if you can see it.
Yes,
the second
facing.
side of the page, but we can't get really long poems.
Okay, well that's
and it has to be one author.
Okay. So those are two important things. It has to be one author, not a brother and sister writing together, for example.
Right.
Not a husband and wife in the adult category, and not more than one typed page. Typical, let's say, typically an 8 by 10 page.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Fair enough. This sounds great.
But
I wish
that's
you
all
could.
in the rules, so they can read that right on.
Okay.
on the
LMLS.org. Go
Yes.
to it. Please sign up, and let's see if you can top the 501 entries from last year. Thanks so
Try.
much.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thanks, Bonnie, for being on.
Right.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you for being part of the January episode of the Library Show. I hope you will use some of these events for your betterment for the beginning of a fresh and wonderful new year. Take care. See you next month.